Hey guys, it's Peter Jordan on the Lost Angler channel, and tonight we're doing the first ever fly shop after hours. And I actually have two people that have nothing better to do with their lives for one evening. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves.
Hey guys, I'm Captain Zach Steele with Bayfly Charter Company.
I'm William Strickland. I'm the executive director at Mobile Baykeeper, and more importantly, I'm a father of 3 young children who I want to inherit something better in their waterways than I've had.
That's 100% correct. And guys, what we're going to be talking about for this first ever fly shop after hours, we're actually going to be talking about improving Alabama's rivers. But a big part of it is a new thing coming up right now, discussing whether to remove dams, put in fish bypasses, or do nothing. And to be honest, I didn't even have a clue this was an option. I've always hoped we could remove dams in Alabama. I didn't even know this was a thing that people were considering doing, or the state was considering doing. And Will works in this every day, and we're going to talk about it. So let's jump in there. All right, so Will, tell us about it, man.
Yeah, so we just gave a presentation on Instagram Live. I hope some of you that viewed this saw that, but I tried to summarize what's going on in the state of Alabama.
And that, by the way, is on Instagram. You guys can go to Lost Angler Instagram and watch it.
So what's going on in our state is that there was a study conducted by the Corps of Engineers, and the sponsor, the non-government sponsor, was the Nature Conservancy, who we work with all the time, a great organization. And they were looking at how to restore fish migration, in particular for some endemic endangered species in our rivers and streams. We'll use the sturgeon as the example of this endangered species that we want to be able to get back to its spawning grounds. But then, of course, there's game fish like striped bass as well. Imagine those of you tuning in, fly anglers will be pumped about that. But to answer your question, they did this study. They put a bunch of options on the table. The first being do nothing, right? That's a preference because it is the cheapest. You don't have to do anything. But of course, it doesn't accomplish the goal. Dam removal was one. There's lots of other options for fish passage. One of the main ones was a natural fish passage channel, I should say. And so what that would be doing is creating a stream, digging out a channel around the dams, and then putting some natural plants, rocks, things in it to encourage those fish to migrate up that way.
Make it feel like a real little river.
Yeah, make it feel natural. A word that makes me a little uncomfortable sometimes when we're building things.
So just to be clear, for anybody who's watching this who probably doesn't know anything about this stuff, because like Peter said, a lot of these things I'm just now hearing about. So as far as an alternate pathway, is there any evidence to indicate that this will actually help the populations of fish that we've seen in decline?
Yes. Yeah, so in terms of evidence, it depends on what you mean. Is there data to support this particular plan, restoring those fish those fish migration patterns, getting to spawning grounds, getting to places where they can have better habitat for what they're used to? There is not data or evidence. We're looking at a novel project here. So
just kind of like assuming that if we were to give it an alternate pathway, it's a possibility that we would see
absolutely. There is great reason to believe that we will restore migration for a lot of these fish that we're talking about. We know that the striped bass they're strong swimmers. They're like those salmon we see out west. And this is not those fish ladders that you may have seen that don't work, right? These is a natural passageway. Now, there is some concern about those slower moving fish, and of course, like the sturgeon, the paddlefish, those mussels we're talking about. There's a little bit more concern there about, will these things actually help migration?
Right.
Yeah. So, aside from fish migrations, is just going to the health of the bay.
Yeah.
If we put in bypasses versus dam removal, because in my mind, I think, okay, if we pull out dam removal, then these rivers can actually move the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And that is what's really going to improve the health of Mobile Bay more than anything else. And I almost feel like, now I don't know, right? I'm not a Scientologicalist.
Mm-hmm.
That was for you, Lee. it just seems like a fish bypass. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I want to see.
But
these
it's not
fish move.
natural.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's a
Yeah.
half-ass solution.
Yeah, so my answer is not that it's a half-assed solution. In fact, it might be the best solution. But what happened in this process was they removed dam removal from the study without studying what will be the ecological impacts and certainly not studying the feasibility of it. And so we don't know if dam removal will be the best option. Now, we do have anecdotal evidence from other systems that it will be the best option. You're right.
I get it, but my thing is, if we're trying to restore seagrasses in Mobile Bay, I feel like a fish bypass isn't going to do that much. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I was going to ask, as in terms of dam removal, because one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was that navigation was one of the big reasons that they did not want to remove the dams in the first place. But then you also said that there has not been any navigation recently in these river systems anyway.
Yeah.
So the irony there, help me out with that. Like what?
I'd love to. So before I get to is are people using it for navigation? I mean, there's no doubt, and in the study they say this, that the health dam removal will have the best ecological impact. We'll start getting those natural sediment, those natural flows where our delta floods and dries. The river's able to move where it wants, and so as we restore wetlands, seagrass habitat that we need for our fish populations down here, those key nurseries.
It just seems to me the Corps of Engineers every spring just flushes the toilet on Mobile Bay.
Yeah, those flows are irregular from what our fish and our plants and animals are used to down here, certainly. So the best thing is to restore that. Now, natural is a funny word, again, I'll say, because dam removal won't necessarily restore natural, because there's dams upstream, we've got the Tombigboo flowing through, but it's better. And then, are people using this? So I mentioned in the presentation.
So will the bypass actually do anything for that? Like, will the
in terms of
bypass actually-
sediment,
Yeah.
there will be some sediment improvement from the bypass. Again, they're going to be studying this over the next year and a half. But will it restore...
Not to the way it was without the dam.
Exactly right. Will it restore what's needed to save the seagrasses, those building blocks of life? No, and that's not a part of this study. They're worried about fish migration, not worried about ecological health downstream.
Okay, but if we restore fish migration, do we have a chance to bring back mussels, which are filtering the water and helping in general?
That's a good point.
That's a good point. Yeah. So we'll if we can restore that, can we get that maybe the mussel population back? And an adult mussel, guys, adult oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day. A mussel does 15 gallons. I know that's a lot less, but when you stretch it up and down the whole river, that's a big difference.
Yeah, so mussel restoration is super important, just as our oyster is for habitat. A part of this fish passage actually is to help those mussels move upstream. Again, we talked about, is there data to support this? The answer is not yet. Certainly we're hopeful, but of course we know dam removal will do more for mussels to be able to restore their natural habitats. They're really sensitive to flow, turbidity, temperature, things that these reservoirs really change for them, change that habitat, as is true for our oysters down here in Mobile Bay. To address your question about are they using the navigation or not, so the study shows that it's low use, which means it's virtually
Pretty much
non-existent. In fact, they've had to do a lot of dredging in the last year. They're doing even more in the next year. They're going to spend $20 million on dredging just so that the current lock system will work. Currently,
because nobody's going up the river, so
they're not
why you
using.
But
bother?
there's the potential for it to be.
Yeah, so what
I have
we
the
saved it
potential to be a
for-
supermodel, but it ain't looking good.
the potential of navigation for new industry that's stated in the study, and so I don't know what that new industry is. It's not listed as to why they took dam removal off. They don't name what that new industry is, so I really have no idea what they're talking about there. But yes, this is something that we see throughout our rivers in the United States, in particular our state, is there's this kind of obsession with moving things up and down the rivers, which makes sense. This is the easiest way to get things down here to the port of the Mobile and get it out of our country.
But
However,
it's affecting all of the ecology in the state of Alabama.
absolutely.
And is it even worth it if nobody's using
nobody
it? We've got a
is using
huge
it. Exactly.
railway system. We've got great roads. We've got all that other stuff. I mean,
Are we getting the most out of it if we're not?
I mean, if we look, are we getting our money's worth out of it?
Absolutely.
There's the big question. Are we getting our money's worth?
Yeah, so are we getting our money's worth out of the Alabama River, Coosa River navigation system? I mean, the answer right now is no, we're not. Well, I'll include the Cahaba in there, of course. I should not have excluded it. We're not getting our money's worth for those dams now. We're losing money on those dams every year. The question:
so the dam itself is a money pit. Is what
oh,
we're
absolutely,
seeing.
absolutely.
I mean, it's like I grew up in Selma, and we had the dams down there, but God, we didn't use them for any of that kind of stuff.
No,
like,
I don't
I can
have
remember, like by the time I remember being a little kid, well, every now and then we'd have dams roll through, but by the time I was a young adult in college, I think I only saw one barge go through that I can remember,
Yeah.
like literally just one, and I think it was lost.
Yeah, so, and that's pretty much not happening at all now. I mean, they can't even get through that lock. I don't have the numbers to say, but anecdotally, yeah, the amount we're spending on maintenance on these dams could be offset by whatever we spend to remove it, right? We remove it, we don't have to spend that money anymore. The question, I think, is will new industry, this potential new industry, will we then get our money's worth, if it even happens?
As a guy from the Black Belt, the idea that industry is
So-
going to happen in the Black
So
Belt,
that's
there's not a
exactly
snowball's
right.
chance.
You look at the Tom Bigby, you look at the Alabama, and you can see that it hasn't happened.
No.
And we also look at places that are highly industrialized, and we say, well, these will provide jobs. And I'm for jobs, certainly. Like, we need our people working.
Industry.
Alabama's one of the highest poverty states in the nation.
We need all the help we can get.
However, we've been playing by this playbook of industrial jobs for a long time, and it hasn't worked. In comparison, we're poorer than we've ever been.
Yeah, 100%. Like I can't, like, so take hospitals like in Central Alabama. Like the number of hospitals has fallen down. Central Alabama is a food desert.
Yeah.
Like a big deal. I mean, I'm serious. So when Dollar General came in and started putting fresh groceries in, I was over the moon. I don't buy them, but
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, I know so many places in Central Alabama. That's the only grocery store.
Yeah.
So for me, I was tickled. Now, granted, we don't know how Dollar Generals were built. We don't know where they come from. They're like, Shannara signs. They just pop up. We just don't know. There's so much mystery. Hold on a second. Am I recording through my headset? I'm not here recording through my headset. We may have just had nothing of this may have been any good.
Yeah, so I think the question we have to ask is, when we ask, are we getting our money's worth, it's who's getting their money's worth. So if there is navigation for potential industry, who's going to reap the benefit of that? What are our tax dollars going to, so that what corporation and individual can build up?
Yeah, and then I could tell you, just growing up, in that area, they tried so hard to get people to want to build up there, to want to
Yeah,
do
of
something,
course.
but you have, what happens in that area is that you've got some folks that live there because that's where they grew up at, that's what they want to do, and I get that, but by and large, the population in the Black Belt, which is what this area, which is what that river's going
Yeah.
through, they're aging out. Everybody with any sort of work skill, ambition, or anything is moved out. Period. They're not
Yeah, the
there.
education system.
Yeah, so
such
you
where
don't
you're
have a
not
workforce.
replacing it,
No, you don't have a workforce. You don't have. I mean, seriously, I'm super proud to say I'm from Selma,
Yeah.
but I ain't proud enough to go back. I can tell you that.
And also financially, in terms of, going back to, defaulting back to your presentation, we're investing so much money into making sure that this is a viable resource for our industry.
Absolutely.
At what point is it going to become, well, we've come too far now, we can't go back? And that goes back to what you were saying about how, financially, alternate pathways for our fisheries to try to maintain or sustain the populations of fish, also being natural. I just wonder if at a certain point it's always going to be, we've already put so much money into seeing this be our industry that anything else won't be an option.
Yeah, the
I'm
sunk
really
cost
afraid
bias.
The state of Alabama is just going to say, well, I'm so scared that the state of Alabama is going to sell us the sizzle and never send us a steak.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am. I'm so scared that there's never going to be a shovel in the ground, no matter what the decision is.
Sure.
Look no further than the Tom Bigby 10-ton waterway or
Absolutely.
these dams that we're talking about, as they're promised economic flourishing for the Black Belt areas. Now, let's make one thing clear. You're from Jasper.
Absolutely.
I'm from Tuscaloosa. The Black Warrior corridor is used all the time. I didn't know there were rivers that didn't have barges on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when we went and fished these other rivers that were less dammed up, that were wild rivers, you know, I considered those creeks.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same thing.
Where I grew up, there's barges coming all the time. So we're not talking about, right now, we're not talking about removing dams on this Black Warrior corridor.
Like the main highways of industry.
Yeah, it does have this tremendous economic progress that has happened. Now, of course, we need to always be observing this and going, hey, is this what's best? What's quality of life for all of our people? But we're talking about the two lowest dams on the Alabama River, which currently have no navigation.
Yeah, they have no navigation.
It's very different than Barge City, Jasper, Tuscaloosa. So that Black Warrior corridor is going to have some different issues than what we're talking about here.
But okay, okay. So obviously we're not talking about the Tom Bigby. We're not talking about the Black Warrior.
Right.
Okay, so removing dams. Okay, it's going to cost the state a ton of money. I get that. But what would be the economic advantage to restoring the fishery and everything else down here in the Mobile Bay area? Because I look at it as the seafood industry, the tourist industry.
There are other industries that are going to prosper from the natural growth of our waterways.
Yeah, that's what I look at. Like, so imagine you could actually go to Fairhope, walk out on the Fairhope pier and go, I can see through the water. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is a complete and total mindset shift of the leaders of coastal Alabama.
Yeah, but I feel like that tax dollar that they would reap look, I feel like the benefits to our area in the tax dollars they would reap in recovering our oyster populations would be tremendous advantages to the state.
So, I don't have the economic data. We're working with some academics that are economists to come up with some more research on this stuff.
They're economic.
They're economicalists. But the choice has been made here, right? So you can look around, whether it be in Bon Secour fisheries or Bayou La Batterie. These are places that were built on commercial fishing, shrimp, crab, amongst many other things. You talk to the people that live there, that families built their lives on these industries, and they're suffering worse than anybody here in coastal Alabama. The choice has been made, and the bet's been made, that that's not the economic impact that we want. It seems that the powers that be are okay with the commercial fishing industry dying, much less the recreational fishing industry.
Yeah.
Like they would much rather you guys be worried about what's going on over in the Perdido system or over Mississippi Sound and even into Louisiana. It seems that the economic choice has been made that we're not concerned about how we make money on our ecotourism, our commercial fishing, our recreational
It doesn't even
fishing.
sound like they're concerned about making money for a business that's not there yet.
Well, I wouldn't say
So they're
that.
trying to protect a dam for industrial interests
So
that are going to happen in the Black Belt?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, hang tight. That's just not going to work.
it's unusual that I get to be the guy in the place to say, well, there's not no interest, right? It's a good thing that they're even considering this, because this is not something that's been considered before. My concern
I like being invited to parties I have no intention of going to too. It makes me feel special. But the point is, that's where this is at.
The concern is, are we going to stop short? Are we going to? You mentioned what I call sunk cost bias, what others call sunk cost bias. We invest in this so much that we're too afraid to turn around
And
do something different.
Right.
And so that's the concern that we have. And so we at least think you have to study this.
Yeah.
And we need economic study.
More research available.
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, 100%, guys. Like 1,000%. I would love to see every damn, I would love to see Claiborne and Miller's Ferry gone. Period. Menfinito, adios. But if it comes down to a fish passage or dam removal, or excuse me, a fish passage or nothing, I'm on like 4 flat tires. So don't get me wrong. I mean,
if it's our only option.
If it's our only option, but I think again, the problem is most people in Alabama don't have a clue that there is an option. Most people don't even know that fish passage is a discussion.
So, what can we do to get this mindset into people's homes, into people's conversations? Because it seems to me like one, there's not enough research for us to even really be able to make a decision as far as what's best for our fishery, for what's best for our waterway. It just seems like we don't have enough data on
hand. How can
hand.
ordinary Alabamians even have a say?
Yeah,
having a say is super important.
How do we have a say? What can we do?
And that's the service, and we have to own this at Baykeeper. This is the service we have to do a better job of providing you guys, and people watching, and those people that care the most, which I would put fly anglers at the top of that list.
I mean all anglers, not just fly anglers, but 100% fly anglers.
But especially
fly anglers and people with other equipment.
Of course, there are many people that care a lot about
kinda.
this, but we've got to make this knowledge available. We've got to. Now, I think it's the state's job to do that, or the federal government, because the Army Corps of Engineers is a federal program.
Montgomery's a black hole, though.
But,
you know what happens in Montgomery? No. The only reason you know is because you were there last Tuesday.
But
the rest of us don't have a clue.
So, but this knowledge needs to be shared. So this is a part of it, right?
Yeah.
This is how we can know. Now, what are the things that you can do? That's the question that the people ask. Now, I talk to elected officials, and many of them. I say many of them. A few have told me straight up, William, I'm for what you're wanting to do. This is not a voting issue, whether it be Democrat or Republican in the state of Alabama. That's not a voting issue for either party right now. What happens to our waterways? What happens to, fish is so low on the list.
It seems to me
but
that
healthy water is also low on the list.
it's on the list, but here's the thing. It always just seems to me that the political situation in Alabama, this is my opinion, is it's always what next, and I don't care what side of the fence you're on, it's what next boogeyman can we scare you with enough to vote. And that's always what it seems like it's always been in Alabama. I remember when I was a kid, it was, we can't have the marijuana. We can't have the marijuana. And then next it was, watch out for them gays, they're going to get you. And then it's just one boogeyman after another, and it's not anything that's ever actually helped Alabama citizens. Ever.
I get the chance to interact with people more and more. The knowledge that there's a fish consumption advisory on the Mobile River that says you shouldn't eat any fish on the Mobile River. It's virtually unknown.
Yeah, think about that. I mean, here's the thing. So this is a human thing. Like just the idea.
Well,
that
it's
you
a matter
live on
of
the
rights.
coast, and it's a right. Yeah, you can't eat the fish. I can't bring home the fish to feed my family.
Well, and it goes beyond that. That's certainly important because there's many people that is how they're feeding their family.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, we got to make ends meet. We better go out in the causeway and catch us a cooler fish.
I'm here to tell you, when I was in college, I kept myself from starvation on speckled trout.
But it goes beyond that, because if those things are getting into the fish tissue, you better believe they're getting into our tissue as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's like I saw that the other day. I saw, I think it was the CCA posted or something, that they're finding antidepressants.
Yeah.
And
redfish.
And
I know that study.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want our redfish to feel sad either. But I'm not sure. Okay, let me be honest. I'm not sure I want them to feel that happy, because if they're angry, they're smashing flies, guys.
That's right.
I need good angry fish, and antidepressants do not do this for me.
Where are the steroids at?
I need them.
Yes, I'm familiar with that study. It's bonefish and tarpon trust,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just antidepressants. There's therapeutic level of pharmaceuticals of many different kinds found in our redfish. So that means like antibiotics, other stuff that we're taking ends up in our waterways. Whether it be
flushing it down the toilet.
flushing down expired pharmaceuticals down the toilet. And
Right.
so the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust did additional testing to fish tissue to find out there's therapeutic levels in our redfish. Now,
Is
This
this,
is-
is this why fish in general
when
are
I
getting harder?
when I say
Man, I just don't feel like eating.
when
today,
I
bro.
say additional, I'm talking about this is a private thing. So it's not just that we already have a fish consumption advisory on the Mobile River.
It's plus the
We're not
pharmaceutical-
even testing for pharmaceuticals.
So you guys, what? So what? So okay, good question. Good question. We have fish advisory here. I check it.
Mm-hmm.
Whole 9 yards. And I'll be honest with you, I hardly ever keep fish anymore.
Yeah,
After seeing
right.
the advisories, it's like, okay.
Well-
I mean, but here's the thing. What do you guys test for? What are y'all looking for?
What do we test
Yes,
for?
yeah.
So we don't do any fish tissue testing unless it's a specific, narrowed down, like there's been a bunch of redfish kills here in south part of Mobile Bay. And this deserves more study. So
Right.
this is an area where we're paying an outside
He's
lab.
not saying that has happened. He says if that does happen.
No, I'm saying it does. It's happening now.
Oh, great, wonderful.
About once a year for a
Happened
couple
last
weeks.
Tuesday.
In May, there's bull reds
I
float up.
remember hearing about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the information to know what's causing that.
I remember that because the first thought was people were like, hey, was this like a gillness situation,
Right.
commercial fishery?
Yeah.
Like, and then after that, it was like, well, it wasn't that, and then
So it does correlate with low oxygen events, but not to the level that bull red should die. So
yeah, redfish
we
are
think that's
tough,
the
man.
one
They
that
are
yeah.
tough.
So but anyway, so we're not doing fish tissue testing.
Yeah.
We'd like to do more. So if anyone would like to become a member of Mobile Baykeeper, that helps us to do this kind of work.
Mm.
However,
Which, by the way, guys, that's mobilebaykeepers.org.
Baykeeper.org. That's
and,
right.
And you guys can actually do a lot more. And we'll get back to it in whole 9 yards just in a second, but Zach and I were talking earlier. It's like, what do ordinary people do? And that's so tough. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do? I can't. I got a wife, I got kids, I got a job, I got the whole 9 yards. What do I do? And what can we as anglers do? And at the end of the day, when we support groups like Mobile Baykeepers, what we're doing is we're putting our money where our mouth is. Now, don't get me wrong, I support Mobile Baykeepers because I'm a terrible, selfish human being, and I make my I'm joking.
I want to catch more fish.
I want to catch more fish, but I make my entire living based on you guys being able to go and enjoy our Gulf Coast. If I don't support these guys who are supporting this fishery, what am I doing? So y'all can go on there and check it out. I'm going to get Will to come back later, and we're going to talk about stuff that you as ordinary anglers, you as ordinary citizens, how we can make Mobile Bay, how we can make our area better. But 100% guys, go online, check it out. They do so much work for us so that we can enjoy this fishery.
Where was I going before I gave my plug? Thank you for doing that, by the way.
I was doing it on
It means a lot. Fish tissue. So, there are things that we don't even test for in fish tissue that are going to matter to human health, right?
Yeah.
The main things that we're seeing are mercury, PCBs, PFAS,
Okay, so
forever chemicals.
so-
Fish tissue,
so
we're
fish
doing
tissue,
very
yeah.
little testing on fish tissue
So when y'all
unless
go
it's
out-
specific. It's very expensive to do.
Yeah.
But it does need to be expanded in our state. What we test for are things like bacteria. That's the primary thing that we're looking for. We produce our swim guides, so you're able to see sewage overflows, which happen all the time down here. We got a high water table. We got outdated infrastructure or overloaded infrastructure here on the quickly developing Baldwin County side. There are certain utilities that are doing a really great job of trying to improve that. There are others that are falling behind. And of course, those fall along socioeconomic lines as usual.
Sure.
So, the Mobile area water sewer system, although having a very outdated system, is rapidly trying to improve
There's
that.
just more money to do
We're
it.
pouring more money in there.
Yeah.
Pritchard Water is having a really hard time, and you probably saw the corruption that came out through that.
Right.
So we're testing through that, but we're also testing things like low oxygen.
So there's no excuse for the Eastern Shore to have such a crappy infrastructure. I'm talking to you guys because I pay it every month. It can't be that expensive to dump it in Mobile Bay.
It's to create a little understanding of what's going on. You've got development meaning tax dollars from the development. You've got new citizens moving in, meaning tax dollars from new citizens.
And
It's very hard to say no or slow down
Yeah,
until
especially-
we can get the infrastructure improved to the point where we can handle all of it.
It's like every time I see it's like April and I was telling you about Zach. April and I were driving to back from Weeks Bay one day. Like we actually went out. It doesn't matter what we do. We're coming back from Weeks Bay, headed back to our house in Daphne. And you guys know I'm in a subdivision, and which if you live in Daphne, you live in a subdivision. So I'm headed back, and I look off to what last year had been a field, had been a farm field situation. And it is row after row of houses going up. And I looked over at April and I said, do you ever get the feeling that we're the ones being farmed?
Yeah.
And so every time we turn around, there's a new subdivision going up. Each one of these has a bajillion and 10 houses, it seems like. And I have yet to see anything I don't know, but I just feel like I never see any of the infrastructure to handle the extra people we're having coming to Baldwin County. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm super happy to have all these new folks move down here. And it's, God knows, we're meeting new friends all the time. They're from other parts of the country, and that's wonderful. I tell people to come in the shop all the time. Where you're from, we're so happy you're here, and we are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's our responsibility to make sure we're ready. Okay, look, if guests come to the house,
Then we have
gotta,
the infrastructure.
Right, if guests come to the house, you got to clean up.
Earlier, we mentioned a mindset shift or a cultural shift. That's what has to happen. So, in the United States and in Alabama, we have a housing crisis. Not enough homes, not enough affordable homes. So, I, for one, am for affordable homes, which means we need more homes. But the part that's missing from the conversation, and many of these conversations would come to economic development, including big industry or manufacturing processes, or where do we put these subdivisions and how do we build them,
Or do we even have the infrastructure to optimize them?
Well, that's what's missing is there's not a sense of connection to the land and water.
No, and also too, you got to look at the amount of money that's gone into it. I tell you guys all the time, if we hadn't moved in our neighborhood when we moved in, we couldn't afford to live there.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the next thing you got to look at. I mean, just looking at what's the county and the state gain by putting in these it's like I'll spend it now and I'll pay for it later. It's I almost feel like it's like the county and the state are treating it like credit cards, and like teenagers or college kids with their first credit card. That's how I feel.
So that's right. I'm coming at it from a Mobile Baykeeper perspective about healthy water, right? But really, the cultural shift is about thinking about the long term, asking, do we know what forever means?
Yeah.
There's many issues that are settled in court cases, etc. That the word perpetuity is thrown around like that's nothing. Forever's a long time.
Yeah, it's a hot minute.
So we're making decisions without that perspective, and in particular, I feel because we've lost our connection to our land and water. My grandfather farmed, right? Most of ours did. One grandfather farmed in a large scale. The other one, of course, had garden in his yard. How many of us have?
So I get it. We're trying to provide the best way we can for our children by putting in the best place we can possibly put them. And I get it. The world's changing. The time of the small town farmer is over. It's gone. I get it, 100%. But at the same time,
we can't forget the significance of where we live. Going back to losing touch with our land. Will, we were talking before we started this roundtable discussion about how many people drive across the Bayway every day or the Causeway, and we're so used to seeing the water every day that we don't really appreciate the significance of what it is that we get to see.
Yeah, what you're touching. Like, and here's the thing: if you don't go out in a boat and go explore
That's it.
and just see how vast it is,
You can't have an appreciation for it.
No. It is so big. Mobile Delta is so big. You can fish it every day for the rest of your life and never see the whole damn thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got though. Well, what we're talking about here, you're mentioning the boat. I talked about gardening. People that are living day to day. I mean, can I make enough money today to feed the kids? Like, getting on a boat is the furthest thing from their mind.
Yeah.
So what we have to be careful about is saying, like, well, you need to change your mind and grow a garden and go out in the water. And instead go, who's making these decisions?
Okay, well, hold on.
To do what?
So when we moved from Selma, okay, we weren't riding on the struggle bus. We were the struggle bus. Okay, so I get it.
Yeah.
I get the fact that you can't go out. Big excitement for us was going to Municipal Park in Mobile. And get
But
to
still,
look at
that
it.
is a way of appreciating the land.
It
But
is.
it is, and you and I we talked about it. We're going to go out and do this. We're going to do a series of videos. I think we're going to drag Will into this too.
Will,
Into
you're coming.
I'm down.
perfect, good. Into seeing Mobile's creeks that flow
Yeah.
through the city. That's such a huge part. But no, I get it. When you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're having a tough time, it's hard just to keep your head above water. You don't have time to concentrate on other things. I 100% get that. But the point is, for those of us that can have the boat,
Yes.
that can do the other things, well, guess what? At the end of the day, if we want to enjoy these wonderful things, we need to do something about it.
Yes.
And there's levels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, I was just talking with my wife recently. She grew up, she was petting our dog. We got a 9-month-old puppy. And she was saying, you know, my family
She's
would
vicious. She'll take your leg clean.
my family wouldn't recognize me laying here on the couch petting this dog. I said, what do you mean? You know, I would have never done this. I said, man, that's so foreign to me because I grew up with dogs.
Yeah.
And we started talking about other things where, I mean, I grew up hunting, fishing, blood, guts, hair. This is where food comes from.
Yep.
This is how you know where the animal has been.
Yep.
We grew a garden. You know, it showed so much. I can't imagine not feeling like my being's connected to the land. Now there's levels, right?
But
Sure.
I do understand what you're talking about because I've had that when our kids were really small,
Mm-hmm.
and we were literally working every available
course.
minute just to keep food on the table and rent paid and the car in the driveway or in the parking spot. The apartment is really what it was. I can tell you, growing up in the country and having to move to an apartment in Mobile so we can provide for that family and not having to be able to be out in nature to go fish. I remember I wrote an article about it not too long ago called "The Year with No Fish." So we were just trying to keep our head above
Yes.
water. And I didn't really go into that part, but at the same time, that is such a key part of the human experience is getting to enjoy that.
And being connected to the land.
It's
Yeah.
at the cellular level.
I think so.
And spiritual level.
It's
Like
a part of
they're the
it's a
same
part of
thing.
our humanity too. Yeah, I you know, one of the coolest parts when Christina and I got married, taking her back to our farm and getting to show her, like taking her out in the woods and showing her the land. And of course, my wife is someone who grew up on the water. Her dad was a shrimp boat captain for 20 years. Yeah, I mean, so they're legit, but like that's such a special moment because you know I grew up like you, appreciating the land, appreciating Smith Lake, and being able to share that with her. I don't think going back to growing up in the city, where we live, we have so much access to water. And there are just so many various ways for us to feel connected
Yeah.
to where we live.
Well, you can do little small things, like even living in Mobile, you could do things like hit 3 Mile Creek or whatever. And I get it, like when we had moved back to Selma after BP decided to share its oil with us. Congratulations, we got some oil to share with y'all. April grew up in Mobile. She grew up in inner city Mobile, right? And so we were in Selma, and when she just went out into the woods and pastures and just walked around, it had a huge effect on her. She's an herbalist.
Yeah, she's an herbalist now.
And that would not have happened
It can change.
if she hadn't had that.
Yeah.
And it was like
Yeah.
lit a fire in her on what is.
And see, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So-
but everybody should be afforded that experience. I
I think there's a couple of things we're two different things we're talking about here. One is absolutely, which is why Baykeeper tries to get kids into the waterways. I don't have this job because I'm genetically different. I have it because I grew up how I just mentioned, right? Like I care about this stuff. everyone deserves that experience. You mentioned driving across the causeway. There's this appreciation that happens. So I'm picturing two different people driving across the causeway. One is that don't show the appreciation you're talking about.
Yeah.
One is somebody that grew up that didn't have the privilege of growing up in this state, and they just don't know to care.
Yeah.
And this is just a road to a place where they're going to do their job, and I can have empathy, compassion, and I hope to get that person on my boat someday and say, hey, look, let's go do it.
Absolutely.
Now, there's another type of person though, and I think it's we're here on the Eastern Shore. They're driving across. This is the type of person that does spend a lot of time hunting, fishing on the water, but they also happen to make a large sum of money in their work that happens to be degrading our waterways, and this is where the
I see.
cognitive dissonance happens. There's another
And there's
group.
nothing wrong with making hard making.
No,
There's
not
nothing
at all.
wrong- and that's not what we're saying.
No,
at all.
no.
What we're saying is,
Having perspective.
yes,
And so I don't mean to group everybody in that camp. So there are folks that make their money and understand the degradation that happen to those waterways and are constantly working to make it better.
yeah, we have so many wonderful customers here at the shop that have done really well for themselves, and I'm so tickled for them.
Absolutely.
But the thing about it, and these people are truly passionate outdoors folks, and they really, really care. They really do a lot. And so there are a lot of folks like that, but
And they're the ones that are our biggest supporters. of
100%,
Baykeepers.
they're the
So-
ones pushing the bar.
So I thank you for helping me make that clarification. Yeah, I mean that. In fact, I think that's the majority of these folks.
I think so too.
But there's a certain thing that happens where you begin to see the world in a distorted way. When you can, hey, the redfish aren't here anymore, or tarpon. I talk about that probably too much. The tarpon aren't here in Mobile Bay anymore at all. Well, I can just go somewhere else to catch tarpon if I want to, right? I can hire a guide for a month and go down to Florida and do that.
Yeah.
I just bring it up to say,
is we've had dams in here since the 70s.
yeah.
And you spoke to Jimbo Matter. If you guys haven't checked it out, you guys can go on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Check out the Storied Outdoors. They do a great job. They just did a interview with Jimbo, and Jimbo is a truly interesting person in every way.
Flying, what?
100%. And y'all 100% go listen to it. It's worth listening to. But the thing about it is he made a great point, and Jimbo and I have had this conversation numerous times. People don't know. They don't understand what they're missing out on. They don't.
Yeah.
We're all born in the 80s, okay? I mean,
Do you know I was born in the 80s?
hey, you're younger than me.
Yeah. I was born in 91.
91?
Yeah.
What a baby.
I was born in the 80s. It was wild, man.
Wow, it's crazy. It was crazy. God damn, I'm old. All right. So anyway, point is, folks, those of us that were born in the last century.
There you go. There you
go. The last century, in the late 1900s. Point is, though, we're God. I mean, just as a kid, let's say it's the 90s or 2000s when we're adolescents and out there playing. We've already missed the boat, and we grew up in a very different ecosystem than the folks previous.
I mean,
It's true.
when we were kids, and I remember this, going to the bait shop down here. We come down here for vacation, and they would talk about Paul Prudhomme and the black and redfish, and how there were no redfish, or hardly any.
Yeah.
I will say this about that. One thing that was good is it made redfish, took it from being a trash fish to being a game fish.
Yeah.
So that was good. So, and
But that was the discussion at the bait shop. I remember my dad.
yeah,
You
cooking
know,
and
that
missiles.
fish
Paul
aren't here
Prudhomme
where-
gave me a job.
Where they used to be,
Yeah.
and I remember, I'm probably misremembering a lot of it, but I remember being a boy and hearing about that and going like, "There's a fish that's not here anymore. What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we kind of went around the world,
We did.
but
It was a good around the world.
it was good around the world. But Will brings back.
Yeah. So what we came here to talk about is
Who's
what's
that?
happening with the dams on Alabama River.
Yeah.
And so to summarize that again, they're studying and likely will do a fish passage around Miller's Ferry and Claiborne Dam. We would like to see more study done on dam removal, and of course, eventually, dam removal will come to that part of the.
Do we know when a shovel would even hit the ground?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't, but that information should be available. I think they're estimating sometime around 2030, something like that. So, you know, it takes
So,
time.
in the grand perspective, that's really not that far away.
No, not at all.
Well, how much have we lost in that time period, though? How much will we have lost?
Well, we have lost in terms of wetlands and sediment. Yeah, I mean, who knows? We haven't seen an Alabama sturgeon in a long time.
Yeah.
We only know they're there because we test the water and we keep seeing their DNA.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I saw that on television.
So we see Gulf sturgeon not very often, but sometimes. But Alabama sturgeon hasn't been seen in a long time. So who knows? And so I certainly don't want to, and we are not standing in the way of a potential ability for the Alabama sturgeon to be able to swallow.
I mean, if the chances are a bypass or nothing, the answer is for me
Bypass.
bypass, 100%.
Something.
Amen. But I want to leave you with this: is what can you? I mean, this is a question I get all the time when I get my fly fishing friends fired up about whatever it is that we're up to. What can I do, right? And so there's a number of things that you can do. First of all, I mean, you know, it's to support our organization, and I don't mean that with like no strings attached. Hey, it's going to fill my wallet and help me to, you know, that's not what this is about. It helps us to do better work, but it also comes with the ability, and not even enhance, whether you're a member or not. We want to hear from you, which is the second thing I was going to say, is that we've got to hear from you guys. What are you seeing? What do you want? What do you not want? What are we doing wrong? How I talked about this today could be better. I need that information to do my job better. You know, you guides, you folks that make your living on the water, y'all know more about this than I'm ever going to. That's the reality of it. Those guys that have been shrimping forever, I mean, they know things that I'm not going to know.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
Don't worry, we're going to talk to the biologists and the research folks, but we need to hear from you. And then the next thing is, speaking of hear from you, is we have a hotline. You can call 251-433-4229. That's 251-433-4BAY. Call us and tell us what you're seeing. Or go to our website. We have a form if you don't want to talk to us. You're out there on the water. You're seeing something weird. We need to know about it. Some of our biggest wins and the biggest corrections we've been able to make has come from citizens calling us and saying, hey, this isn't right.
Absolutely.
What's going on? So that's the next thing that you can do. And then the last is this. If you follow us or get our emails or even do it independently from us, I don't care how it gets done, we have to let our elected officials know, our leaders of our industries know. We got to let everybody know that this matters.
This is a voting issue.
This is a voting issue for
voting
us.
issue.
And there are plenty of places here in the United States where, whether it be Republican or Democrat, that it's a voting issue that you have to have a stance on what's happening with your waterways.
Absolutely.
Because it's about human health. It's about the fishery. It's about, in my opinion, it's about the value that's just endowed to all of creation. I mean, all of this matters.
It's about home. It's about home.
Absolutely. It's about rootedness at home, and are we going to give our children something better than what we had? So we have to let this be known. If you know elected officials, if you can answer the call, we ask you to do that. So I'm looking forward to coming back. We'll go around the world again and talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. Get it on down. Maybe we'll do it on the water, but that's what folks can do if you're interested in this. The comment period is over for dam removal. So we've filed our comment.
That's the thing too. We didn't even, most people, I didn't even know there was a period to comment.
Yeah, but
that's the thing. That's
but
the problem.
I'll tell you this, is there will be a period where they have to answer each one. And with that often comes another ability for people to make their voices heard.
So Peter and I will be there.
We'll let you know when it happens.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, thank y'all so much for watching. The next Fly Shop After Hours, we're probably going to be talking about just more fishy stuff. Not going to be really talking about dam removals and things we've got to deal with here in Lower Alabama. It won't be quite so heavy. If you guys have any opinions on dam removal, fish bypasses, and all that, I'd love to read in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
I really would. I would love to see what you guys think about it. Is it important to you? Does it even matter to you? what would you like to see happen? Because again, I don't think that most of us even understand. I didn't. I mean, seriously, until Will and I started talking about it, I didn't even know it was an option.
Yeah.
So it's a really big deal. But I know it's a really long-winded video, and if you stayed around this long, I'm sorry, but I really appreciate it.
Shout out to Braided River.
Me too.
Yeah, for sure. David and everybody up there, thank y'all so much for supporting
Thanks
the
for
shop.
supplying the fuel.
Exactly. It probably would have been a less wordy conversation had we not been so well fueled. All right, guys. Just like always, we'll see you on the water.